Center. Right. Well, welcome to the Unheard Outsider, and I am your host, Q, coming from South Puget Sound Community College. I am the Assistant Director in the Barbra Clarkson Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Center. And today we are having a really important conversation, which is really unpacking the trans experience. And what does that mean? It's always been a very important conversation. People think that it's new, and it's not. But the fact that we keep having the conversation is very problematic, which means to me, people aren't listening. And so I want to start us off by introducing the folks in the room. And I'm going to jump it off here with now, and I will call my fam, Jay. If Jay can let the people know who they are, what they do in the world, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Yes, my name is Jay Banks. I am the executive director of Pizza Clutch, which is a local nonprofit where I won't get into the whole thing, but we do support groups for LGBTQ plus youth in all of Thurston County and all the high schools at least. Hopefully we can get other places. I am originally from the DMV. I've kind of only been in this area for about 3 years, so lots to get used to, a lot of changing, and that's kind of just how I am in general. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a very fluid person, kind of non-binary in all of the sense of the word.
Thank you so much, Jay. Next person I want to bring into the space in the room is someone I've known for a very, very long time. We were both students. Is Jaden. Jaden, let people know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi. I'm Jaden. I also go by Jay as well. But I'll let you keep the J name for right now. There's no confusion. But I currently I work full time as kind of like an appointment counselor just with Hennepin County, and then I'm currently finishing out school to become a licensed esthetician. So it's like doing facials and doing waxing and stuff like that. So I really want to make sure I have like an actual place that people outside of like the binary can come to and feel comfortable with coming to me for these type of services. Like whatever I do, I end up offering once I do start working in that field. But yeah, and I do go by he, him pronouns, and yeah, also thank you for having me here too.
Of course. And without further ado, always, EJ, let people know who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm EJ, and I am a student at SPSCC. I'm in the automotive tech program. So this time next year, I hope to have a job within the industry somewhere. And I am also Q's office assistant in the DEIC at SPSCC. So I get to be his right-hand man. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm telling you, EJ saves lives. Okay, and one of them is mine. Okay, because we'd be busy over there.
Yes.
One, again, I want to thank you all for coming into the space. This conversation is really important to me, and one of the things that really that really just stuck out to me is that me and EJ were having just a meeting, and we were having a conversation. Me and EJ can talk a long time, and we can go off and talk about all things. And we were talking, and he was like, bringing up a word called, what is it? Super straight, I think. And I was like, well, like, what the hell did that, so like, I'm like, did I miss something? And so he's like, yeah, no, it was like, I think it was trending on Twitter. Is that right? Is it Twitter?
TikTok.
Or okay. On TikTok. And I'm like, that made me feel old because I stopped at Instagram. It was like Facebook, Instagram, and then I was like, I don't know if I can really jump into any more social media platforms and try to keep up with all the passwords and all that stuff. My brain can't do it. And so I was like, interesting, like we're still having this conversation. And so my first question to all of you, and any of you can go, we can just let it flow naturally. What is one of the most bothersome things that people just don't get right about the trans experience for you in your own personal journey? Like, what is that thing, or multiple things? But if there's one thing that sticks out to you, like, this really just pisses me off because we keep having this conversation.
I would say respect. Like, we are all people. Can't you just respect how I identify? And because I respect you, how you identify. That's totally cool. Cis, straight, het, whatever, or anybody within the queer community, just in general respect. Why can't that just be a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Respect. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like the first thing that came to my mind was it's more of the questioning. Like, I've had a lot of relationships with people who don't necessarily understand my identity, and probably mostly because it's not binary. But like perfect example, a guy I was with was like, I was showing him pictures like, oh, this is like, I like to change up my look, all this kind of stuff. And there was one where I was particularly like dressed masculine, and he's like, but I can see your hips, you're still a woman under there, all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, ooh, we shouldn't be hanging out anymore. So that kind of thing, where it's just like the questioning of how I've, told you about myself. Like, if I told you who I am and how I am, then you take that. That's all you need. Don't look at anything else to question how I identify.
Thank you.
I agree. Also, like pronouns, and just like understand, like, yeah, that's okay. Like, not kind of comparing it to a dog, like that we're dogs or anything like that, but just like how quick people are to, oh yeah, no, this is like, they'll come up to somebody's like, oh, she's so cute. Oh, it's a boy. Oh, he's so cute. They'll be so quick to change that with no hesitation. But when there's a person in front of them that they probably don't even know, like, oh yeah, my pronouns are X, Y, and Z, and they're like, oh, well, why? It's like, why are you asking all that question? Why is that such an issue to you?
It's in one of the things I do know for sure is that working in the center, I've had multiple students that identify as trans, right, talk about the misgendering, and of course all of the things with the pronouns. And one of the things that I've heard a lot, like teachers, staff, and it really does affect our trans family, right, when you are not using the right pronouns and the misgendering. And I just really want to put that out there, because we do a lot of trainings, and EJ knows this too, that when we do a lot of trainings, in particular talking about the trans experience, or like Trans 101, and understanding the whole spectrum, right, because it's not just one way of looking at the trans experience, it's an entire spectrum. And one of the things that comes up a lot is the pronouns. Like, that's the first thing that cis het people want to I'm like, just follow the rules. Like, I don't understand how difficult that can be, but which leads me into the next question around kind of, and I've been thinking about this, what is your, like, how do you deal with or facilitate, communicate conversations around the idea of the pronouns being connected to what I hear like Janet or Laverne and other trans folks talk about this idea of passing. Do you think that's why, or do you think it's more so the fact that people is just being fucked up? Now, I do believe that, but I want to talk about the parallel to a lot of cis straight folks, right, where they're kind of like, oh, you don't look like such, so like it's hard for me to really jump on. So what are y'all, how do you feel about that, and what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that, or is it, I really want to talk, because these are a lot of questions that come to me, and for me being a an academic, I can give them the academics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just don't fucking do it. Like, just listen, right? But for some people, it's kind of like, well, they don't. And it's like, there's moments where it's like, you get tired of constantly saying the same thing over and over again. So
For
what are your
sure.
thoughts about the pronouns connecting to like this idea of the person passing? Because I've had actually someone at my institution that did make a statement to me about a trans student and stated that, oh, if basically was saying in particular that this student didn't basically look like the pronoun in which they want to be referred to as, they should basically look at doing like transitioning and trying to get to look like such in order for
Mm-hmm.
said person to,
Like respect their pronouns.
pronouns, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what are y'all thoughts on that? Just because I'm telling you, I can't throw my hands at work, but what I can do is I can fight you with words. So what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like at the end of the day, it's all fucked up.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like for somebody to say like, because somebody's not passing enough for them to respect their pronouns, it's like, who are you to say all that? It's like you probably have whatever you have going on in your life personally, so why are you doing this to somebody you don't even know, who's not even bothering you or anything like that? They're just being them, minding their business. So like, why do you have to interject yourself into somebody else's life and put your opinion out on them?
Yeah, that person's going to be disrespectful regardless, it seems. But I'm like, I don't know, I come from academic background as well. So like my brain is immediately like, oh, they'll talk about how psychology, how we have schema and you build that up. So like, yes, of course, our brains notice patterns and that's what we're going to go towards. But it like, true, but also kind of bullshit, because the idea is like, if somebody came up to you and they were like, you told them what your name is, but they're calling you a different name the whole time, like you're going to feel a type of way about that. And that's the thing that is missing, is that idea of like empathizing with people just on a basic thing. Like, I don't want you to talk to me in a way that's incorrect. I don't want you to address me in a way that's incorrect. And you wouldn't like that as well. So let's get that together. And the idea that it's really hard, it's not. Like, I mean, I work in a world where like everyone I interact with is queer and trans, and like they all use various pronouns. Some just use their name, some use like the letter, like an initial for their name. Like, it's just, those are things that I have to practice because it is outside of my like purview of the world. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just keep trying. And when I mess up, I'm gonna keep trying again, because I respect and care about this person a lot, in a sense where I don't want to like hurt their feelings. So it's like I don't know, some people just don't want to empathize. They don't want to they don't want to connect in that way, or like even extend their humanity in that sense. And it is really fucked up.
Yes.
It is. I feel like those people aren't gonna like listen regardless. Like you were saying, Jay, they're just gonna be rude in general. Although, I feel part of it is to do with like the social concept of the binary, if that makes sense. So like passing is, what people see each other as and are like, okay, well, I can see this, so that's easier to like connect those together. And when someone's like, yeah, but no, it's actually this way, their brain just can't deal with it. And they're not, and this is my assumption, right? They're not willing to go that extra step and be like, okay, let me rethink this. Let me just go ahead and redo my thought process so that I can respect you and how you live and your experiences. Because I've had that happen to me. I mean, I'm sure we've all gotten misgendered in one way or another. And it's kind of like, it makes me feel some kind of way. Sometimes I get mad about it, and sometimes I'm just like, I'm tired of this. Can't you just go along with it. I know I haven't had all the surgeries. Early in my transition, I know my voice is still high. Like, come on, man, just, this is how I am. Just accept that.
Yeah, let's just move on. I think,
So,
I also think to push a little further, 'cause with the people who don't want to question that, I always am considering like the fact that if you are questioning the gender binary, it breaks your entire world.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like everything that you know about the world is a lie at that point. And that's some scary stuff. And it says something about like queer and trans folks, specifically trans folks, that we are so self-aware, and we have done all of that really deep inquisitive work about the world and how we fit into it, and where we've gotten to a space where we can expand what that looks like. I think that's just really, really dope. But for some people, that's terrifying. Like nobody wants to look that deep, because it really does, like, it really changes everything.
It does. It's, I didn't, and I remember when I remember just I think I'm trying to remember what year I was in. I want to say I think I was in my last year of graduate school, and I don't know. I think Jaden. I think it was. I don't know if you had graduated or if you were still around, but I was in that process of like figuring out where I lie on the spectrum, and I didn't. I tapped into a lot of like my, like I would say, bottled up feminist. And when I got into grad school, and I'm like, oh, because it was something about grad school that made me feel like I'm adulting, and I'm ready to take on the world, and I really did not realize like the just the crazy amount of femphobia within, right, the queer community, right, because there's this very heteronormative moving pace thing that's just saturates right within that. And I would get my nails done, to get my hair, and I felt great. I felt good, but there was still this thing here. But the other piece to it was also those who identify as trans. And when I was in grad school, my second year, and was during my second year, a first year had come in who identify as trans, constantly being misgendered by, we're talking about like critical scholars, like people who read this shit, you know what I mean? And I was just like, wow, like this is her experience. And it came with that whole thing of a very heteronormative way of looking at things, but also the fact, because of that whole transition piece of like the passing. And I'm just like, damn, like if people who don't even have a fucking education of understanding this shit, like people with the education still do this shit, right? And who really is about that, well, Satan about that life, but we gotta keep our eyes wide shut. But I would, right? Eyes wide shut. And so I personally, it just bothers me, especially for people who lie on the spectrum of like the non-binary, and those who have particular pronouns and present different. Like for me, I'm like, yeah, I like to get my hair done. I still like to keep my beard, and I like to get my nails done, right? And even that, and so it bothers me on so many levels, right? That people can't live and exist and be, right? Because we don't fall within boxes that work for you, right? Of the quote unquote traditional way of looking at how we supposed to move through the world. Now, my other question is a little deep. Is what has been a lot of the problematic things or fucked up things when it comes down to what it means to be trans and or non-binary in the the queer community as a whole? Like, what are just a lot of effed up things that, you know, non-self-identified trans queer folks just fuck up, do wrong, all of those things it pertains to trans folks, right? What are some of those experiences that just is still fucked up? Because I see it a lot.
I have like a almost kind of macro scale one. If you just think like, I feel like the prime example of kind of the like intra community kind of fucked upness is if you look at like Pose and how it is a show full of beautiful, amazing, really talented trans women and non-binary people, but like the only person who's getting awards for that show is Billy Porter.
Yes.
And he is a cis gay man, you know? And so it's that kind of thing. It's like Black trans women specifically have been like pushing the fight forward since the very beginning. And the recognition compared to the amount of work that's being done by Black trans women specifically is like, it's not even, it's not comparable. So I think that's like the huge misservice in that it still really like shows up kind of all over our communities. Like we got trans pride, you know, rather than like trans people being really celebrated at Pride. And I would say the same like race too. Like there's Black Pride because like Black people don't feel comfortable at normal June Pride. Like,
yeah.
So there's just like there's a real big separation between those like parts of the community, which I think is really unfair because there's so many like people who've been really pushing and doing this work that a lot of like white cis gay people got to benefit from and get to kind of represent in our media. So it feels like an anomaly when like Black or like Latino, like when people who are not white are queer or trans, like it's still kind of weird. It still seems like being in the LGBTQ plus community is like a white thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm gonna come back to that because I do want to follow up though. I want to give our other two folks, you know, some space. What do you all both think? Anyone can go.
I would probably say Caitlyn Jenner and the government, just government in general, because I mean we all know what she's been saying out in the media. Just it's like she wants to be cis in a way. It wants to fit in some way, and so she's saying all these things to get votes, win people over, and do all this stuff. And then you got all these states within the U.S. having all these like trans-related surgeries, having those be done on like youth that are like 18 years of age and younger, 19 and younger or something. Otherwise, if they did, it'll be a felony. It's like, why are these governments always trying to govern people's bodies when it's like what? I just don't get it.
Caitlyn, girl. If I ever meet Caitlyn, it is not gonna be nice. But I'm saying that just being honest. Like, what my grandma would say, Lord be offense. That's all I'm gonna say. I can't with Miss Caitlyn, honey.
Some people's kids.
Yeah, Caitlyn is she's so violent. I just you know, when you do this kind of work and you live it, right? You live and you have to walk outside every day, and they're like, "Oh, what do you think about Caitlyn? Why are we even talking about her?" Like, I'm fixing my mouth to talk about Caitlyn today. Just let Caitlyn be with Caitlyn, okay? But we still gotta critique it at the same time because it's still violent, right? All right, Kira, I'm gonna give you 5 of my minutes today. Stop that bullshit, and let me go back on over here because you know there's such a bigger fight, right? And so we just have to figure out. For me, I always say we have to figure out kind of where to place our energy in this fight, and it just sucks when it's always a person within the communities that makes it worse. Like I can't, my brain still can't understand. I just can't.
Yeah.
EJ.
You know, I don't really pay attention to a lot of media, even though I'm on all the social medias, just because it is so negative, and I just don't want that toxicity in my life. Every so often I will jump on and just see, you know, something that's like, okay, whatever. And the only thing that could, like, I really think of that really irritates me is the whole LGB drop the T uh, thing that's happening. I'm like, we're all in the same community. Come on, why are you guys excluding the trans folks? I mean, Marsha P. Johnson, wasn't she the first one that threw the shoe? Is only because of her that we have, you know, the pride. And like Jay was saying earlier, it's just trans folks have moved through the movement of pride itself and done so much, but now all those cis folks want to take out the trans folks. Like, that doesn't make sense to me in any kind of way, because without a lot of trans folks, you wouldn't have the same rights that you do now. So it's kind of like, what are people thinking if they're just going to exclude all trans folks?
Can you give a little more context, background of like what, like, for just the audience in regards to like what's happening with the drop in the T and a little bit of that, just from what you.
So from what I know and what I understand is that it's just the overall lesbian, gay, bisexual community who wants nothing to do with the trans community, says that they're not even part of the queer community because they some trans folks are straight. So why can they be a part of the community if they transition and they're actually straight or identify as straight? You know, or like they just don't belong because they're not technically queer, whatever they define queer as.
Okay, so basically, to how I understand it is they're trying to group trans folks as like they're like a monolithic community, and that's not the case. Like it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, the other thing that comes up a lot when I'm either talking to people or particular, you know, my ears are open and people are chatting, is a lot of it comes from where a lot of particular queer folks feel as though that a lot of the focus has moved on to trans folks, and everybody else in the community is just overlooked. What are your thoughts about that? Because I have a different critical perspective, but I'm gonna let that rest for later. But
No, I think yes, good. Like, trans folks deserve some attention, and like, I don't know, maybe that's controversial, but yeah, like, it's been like, I don't know. I'm just thinking about like marriage equality was such a huge thing that was happening, like
yes.
when I was still in my youth, you know. Yeah, I don't know, but like I just remember all the time marriage equality, all of that, and there was still no consideration for like whole parts of the community, and that was like the big fight. And there are other fights within that, you know, but mostly connected to like that, like the sanctity of marriage being challenged. And I feel like we've gotten to a point now where there's so much more information out there, so many more people can find out about themselves. That's why people think that, you know, being trans is a trend and all of that, when really it's just like, well, folks have access to information that's been kind of eradicated for centuries, so of course. but it's just like, yeah, we kind of deserve a spot in the limelight. We deserve to have protections. We deserve to have rights and to be able to live without being discriminated against or fired or have to, you know, do work that we don't want to do. Like, it's, yes, it is time. And it's okay to, like, the whole idea is to help lift up the people who are most marginalized, because then that will affect everybody. Like, I don't understand why you're gonna try to push out a part of the community when, like, if they get everything that they need, you're gonna get probably more than you need. Like,
Yes.
like, come along the ride. It's only fair. Like, it at the base level, it's only fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just time, you know, for the trans folks to have that, like Jay was saying, be in the limelight. You know, everything else has been fought and is still being fought for: women's rights, gay, lesbian rights, and now trans rights. This is just more of a, as time has gone on, there's always been, I think, just this one focus on one of the marginalized groups, whatever it is. And at that moment, that just happens to be the loudest voice, the one that needs the most attention, because it's been so pushed far back on the stove. You know, it's on the back burner and has been boiling for years. So it's just time.
Yes.
I definitely agree with the both of you on that, and um, it's really annoying when people are like, oh, they're just trying to, they're just what is it? Because you remember when like a lot of like within the trans community when they were kind of exploiting kind of with the secret brand with the pads for the cycle, menstrual cycle. And they're like, well, a lot of people, mostly cis people, were like, well, they're just trying to get attention. They're just doing that to get attention. I always want something. But it's like anybody would do that when it's something that they feel is connected with them and they're genuinely upset about it. So it's like, why is it different because of somebody you can't? For some reason, you're having a hard time understanding who they are and why they are who they are or something like that. But it's like they're if you were to come out saying the same thing, everybody else would still back you up. So it's like we all, at the end of the day, it's like nobody's doing stuff purposefully to be like the bad guy or to seem like negative or anything like that. It's like just genuine.
Yeah, I got a chance to meet. I don't know if you all. I mean, you all might know. Do you Andrea Jenkins? Who was, I think, elected back in 2017 as the Ward 8 for Minneapolis. And I got a chance to hear her speak. And the one thing that she said that made so much sense, which goes back to Jay's point, which is the point of is when we protect and uplift trans folks and their experiences, it's a trickle down effect of everyone else in the community. And and it feels like it's the same thing being said, no one's listening. And it just drives me crazy. But I do want to go back to kind of when we were talking about more so like the media presentation and going back to Pose and all of those things. And even I just heard some people kind of not being a little bit happy. I don't know if anyone watches Legendary on HBO Max, but there's a lot of just pushback to like certain people on a panel of judges, right? But for Pose, I just personally have a hard time seeing white queer folks, like, in my opinion, kind of like, I feel hold all of these rights of of the experiences of queer people of color. Like, I have a hard time with that. Like, I know that it was created mostly, you know, Ryan Murphy and all that, and you know, I, you
Whole
know,
other
people
bag.
like people like Ryan Murphy. I'm not saying I don't like Ryan Murphy. I just have a hard time when I see a lot of white queer folks in particular who in that industry. I feel like there's other ways to support us. Like, if you want to like throw money at us so we can own our own rights to things, that's fine. Like, don't I have a hard time when, like, in my mind, I'm like, a white queer person is listed as a creator of this. Like, I have a, like, how can you be a creator of a show where that's not your lived experience? Like, I have a hard time with that. Although we know there is another person of color that is a part of that, which I appreciate, but I just have a hard time. And I know he creates a lot of queer visibility, right? But I'm like, there's so many underground YouTube Black or queer people of color YouTube series shows that, in my opinion, should be picked up. Like, these are people who created their own content, bringing their own folks in. I mean, people that want to be actors and in the industry. In my opinion, and I just personally have a hard time. So I do want to which is why I wanted to come back to this, is, you know, especially the existence of 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 um, of trans folks in the industry. What's very interesting to me is how trans folks are portrayed in TV, and or non-binary folks are portrayed in television. And do you all see any kind of, what are your thoughts about how trans and non-binary people being portrayed and depicted in television? Like, do you feel like it's a progression? Do you feel like these mofos still ain't got it? So I really want to hear what you have to say, because I have my own, honey. I be throwing things at the television, but that's just me. But go ahead.
But don't worry, I yell at the TV constantly. My fiance is like, it's a good thing I love you. Otherwise, we'd never be able to watch TV together, just because I talk back all the time. And I personally think it depends on the creator of the show or movie, because there's more and more trans folks who identify as trans outside of whatever type of entertainment or media it is that are finally being portrayed. I mean, some of the shows that I can think of off the back of my head is Sense8. Like, that was an amazing show with great queer and trans presentation. And Chicago 911, there's a very beautiful Black trans man in that show who's a firefighter. It's fantastic. Although, I haven't really seen very many because I'm just very particular. I'm sure that there's still other folks who don't get, like, let me back up a second. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's getting better. It was worse, but it is getting better. And I think it's just a matter of time until more and more trans folks are able to pick up and be creators of their own shows without having that cis het white person, be like, oh yeah, we're here too, so you're going to get all the things.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with EJ. Yeah, I could see like the type of movie and like comparing like the actors and actresses and all that, just to see like who is like a good fit. But then it's like, I feel like if you have a trans role, non-binary role, why not have them be trans, or at least have them actually following along with somebody who is trans or non-binary, so it's not like, oh, I'm just gonna go off to a whole bunch of random people and do my research and then like, okay, this is how I'm gonna act in the show now. But like, you're at least with somebody and give that person the credit that they do deserve, because without them, you wouldn't really have your role as good as it could have been.
I think I do, yeah, I agree that it has been getting better, and it is because there are a lot of people who are trans who are like finding their ways into the industry. Like, kind of think back to like oh gosh, now I'm forgetting their name, but the sisters who created the Matrix, like they came out as trans, you know, like 5 years ago maybe. So it's like, oh wow, all of this like really great media was actually made by trans women. Wow, that's really exciting. So there are like ways for people to get in, but I know like for me as like a non-binary person, I feel like the thing that I still get annoyed by is that a lot of non-binary people on shows are like skinny, white, like flat chested, maybe AFAB folks. And I'm like, that's not me. I'm like a Black Southern like queer trans person who's got a lot of ass and a lot of, you know, chest. So like there's no way that I can like, that's not representing me, because I have like different struggles being a like really like, I don't know, like bigger person that's non-binary. So like that gets really annoying. And one thing you said earlier about Pose like being made by Ryan Murphy, it just kind of makes me think about the fact that one of our like pieces of like queer trans like history like in media, like Paris is Burning, was like made by white people who had found their way, you know, to the boardwalk and into these spaces to like study these like Black and Latino like trans people, and like, and that the way that affected media for like until now, like the fact that people know what balls are, you know, even now is because of that piece of media, but it wasn't even like, it wasn't from the people that were the center of it. So it's like, it's been this thing that's been happening for so long, and we are now getting to the place where people can make their own media. And I'm hoping that brings more folks into the industry, or that they, you know, maybe destroy that industry because capitalism and all that kind of stuff. And let's make a new one.
So down with that.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. But you know, I'm always down with dismantling. I want to be very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Where you need me to take things down, I'm all right with that.
Yes.
It's for me. I mean, for me as like a Black queer person, I mean, I grew up around trans folks. Like it was just a part of me growing up in like junior high, high school. Like I mean, it was just a part of my life. Like it wasn't like new ones. People like, oh, I'm like, yeah, like fucking trans people been around for a long ass. Like, so for me, it was just what it is. Like it's just people, right? And what I find to be interesting when it comes back to representation, I find it interesting because I'm a big television watcher. I'm always looking for LGBTQ stuff. Like that is just my thing, because I like to make sure what's being represented is, if it's not correct, is being critiqued. Because as we do the work, people like, oh, you know, did you see this? I'm like, that shit was problematic as fuck. Like that is not real. So for me, I will say this. I like the first time I actually seen, because you know, grad school, you feel like you can't watch shit because you just constantly writing papers and you know, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Mistresses, and there was a trans, what identified as a trans man, right? And I was like, oh, okay. Because when they introduced it, I was okay, let's see how they gonna do this, right? And I'm gonna be very honest, I feel like they fucked up, because the way in which so there is a woman of color, Black woman, who was into this, you know, trans man. But of course, we go back to the conversation, passing, or what they would call as passing, and her not knowing, like, oh, I really like him, and blah, blah, blah. And then of course, when he was like, you know, XYZ, this is, you know, who I be. And then she was like, oh, I don't know if it can work. So I just feel like you bring so in my mind, like you bring the presence of a trans person and then you just fucking do that. Like that just didn't set well for me. And the other thing too is, I don't know if you've seen this, and I just would like your opinion. I've seen a lot more trans men like on TV than I've seen trans women. And what are y'all thoughts on that piece of representation and things?
It's kind of like they pick like 2 or 3 trans women and they're like, okay, y'all the only ones we're gonna put on TV. But I feel the same way. Like I see a lot more trans men or like AFAB folks are getting like opportunities. But like, I don't know, I think about the fact that Laverne Cox has been in so many things, which is great. She is amazing, but those things either didn't last or she was put in those kind of roles. Like that, and like I'm like, where is she now? You know, it's I don't know what that is. I mean, in general, it is you know, like trans misogyny for sure that is affecting the fact that like we're going to see a lot of trans men on media and kind of represented everywhere because like our society really upholds masculinity, but trans women are just not going to get the job, or we're going to stick to the ones who we think are really safe and maybe not a little confusing for the the average, you know, viewer at home. So I feel like that's where it comes from, which really sucks, because on the other hand, you see a lot of like drag queens. Like RuPaul's Drag Race is like, you know, one of the most popular shows, which I just remember being like a kid sneaking and watching Logo and being like, oh snap, Drag Race is on. But like, I don't know. Drag queens are more acceptable than like trans women at some points, which is confusing.
Yeah, RuPaul is also very problematic. From a,
Yeah.
I just want to be, even the new stuff is still problematic. But again, just that whole process to me, you know, people like, why you watch it? I said it's a catch-22, right? Because it's like you got queens of color there, and it's like, fuck, like I need to support my people, right? Like the viewership and all of that, and then you got RuPaul, who's very problematic. You know, we like there. I can still appreciate you being down for the cause, but I can still feel like we can still critique. So I just want to be clear about that. When people are like, oh yeah, I don't hate RuPaul. RuPaul's been operating in capitalism for a long time, and I don't know if Ru lost who Ru was in that process. So that's just my own opinion about that. What are your thoughts also on, now I want to really talk a little bit about, and the reason I'm kind of staying in this is because I get a lot of people like to refer or talk about LGBTQ, specifically trans folks, non-binary folks, because of what they see on TV, right? And so one of the things I find very interesting, and I'd like to know your thoughts, I think about all of just POC or specifically like Black LGBTQ series or shows, right? I find it interesting that the longevity of the shows are very short. And I don't know if you've caught that. And I don't know if anyone remembers Noah's Ark. Heard of Noah's Ark.
It was so good, and they did us dirty by getting rid of it.
You know, and everybody had their own opinion about it, but it was the first time I was able for me to see myself represented. I was straight Noah, like in my time back. I'm like in this very non-binary, fluid femme space at the time. And I think about that, and then I also think about, now we have Pose, right? So, but Pose is about to end after 3 seasons. You know what I mean? So it's like when we see things like, what is the other one that was out? Queer as Folk had like multiple seasons. And I know, yeah, the L Word. And we think about just like Black POC of color. Like, what do you think it is of why they don't last? Like, I like Legendary. There's still some things for me where I'm like, why isn't all of the judges like OGs in the game. Like, why is like I don't understand. Like, I know the whole thing about bringing a guest. I mean, I know that's just a very capitalistic idea, but Laomi is the only person that I can like. 'Cause I live for Laomi, but there's so many other amazing ball OGs that could have been at the table, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm just very critiquing in this particular, but I'm like, how long is Legendary gonna stay around? Every time we bring, Black POC queer folks to the space of television, we don't last long of visibility. And I would love to know, what are your thoughts on it? And why does it have to be told by someone that doesn't look like us in order for it to last? So what is your thoughts on that? I know that question is loaded, but I just, when you think about it, you know what I mean? It's hard to say, damn, like, Pose is great. Like, I do like watching Pose, but I'm like, damn, 3 seasons? Right? American Horror Story, that motherfucker got like 8 seasons.
It really does.
Law and Order SVU has like 20 seasons.
Shoot, Grey's Anatomy, which I will say does have more Black people now than it did when it started,
yes.
And I appreciate. But still, yeah, I can't even, because especially I'm somebody who also really likes television and stuff, but I'm always late to like a season. By the time I've started watching it, it's been canceled or about to. So I don't know, maybe it's my fault that everything's getting canceled. But I don't know what their excuse is. It's probably something about ratings, but like Pose is a really popular show. Like every queer trans person I know has tuned in for that, and even some people who aren't a part of the community. So I really think it's just like people not wanting to invest the time in making those like really authentic stories that could last a long time. Like they're like, we're just gonna kind of encapsulate this feeling, this time. Like Pose is very like decade centric kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe hopefully it's also brought a good amount of recognition for the people working, because I know that a lot of them are getting other work now. But I do wish that, like, if not keeping that same cast, like at least focus on, at how ball culture and voguing has continued to, like, you could make a modern version of Pose. We still doing that stuff. There's not enough commitment to like keeping those stories, and I don't know if it's because they're really trying to keep a white audience and like keep as many eyes on the thing as possible. I that's my inkling, is that it's just like, we've only got like a certain amount of the population who's watching this, so let's not invest more money into it.
Media racism, that's basically where I see it, is yes, it's out there, fantastic, but 2 to 3 seasons, and it's written by someone who is white. Like that, just to me, that screams racism.
Yeah.
And he's probably gonna work on something else, or already working on something else. Is gonna be going back to whatever else he's been working on, like American Horror Story type of stuff, and using similar cast, or trying to, because I know he used some of the people from Pose in like his last season. I was like, oh, okay, so that's where those people had came from. Now they're in Pose, but it's still like, now what? But I agree with EJ about the racism, with the media racism, because that definitely is real. And like a lot of the bigger corporations, a lot of the bigger producers, they're mostly white, and if they're not, they're creating something else because they know they're more confident and comfortable in that setting, because they know like this audience, they're always going to be here, and they know that they're going to get these certain amount of money, revenue, all that, ratings and all that. So like, oh, well, if I keep doing this, I'm going to get people, everybody is going to love this no matter what. But then it's like, they don't want that kickback from other people. Like, well, now you guys are writing about gay people, the LGBTQ plus community. I don't want to watch that. It's like, okay, you don't have to watch it. It's for the people who do want to watch it.
Thank you, bro. Thank you all. Like the reason I stick on this is because people are like, oh, did you watch or did you see? And I'm like, no, them bitches is crazy. And why are you watching them? Right? So then I tell you, stop paying attention to them. It's like, it's like, don't touch the stove. You just do it. So I just, and I want to just try to go ahead and do a slight turn here. I know that we've all, from an academic perspective, right, switching over to just like what it meant to live through school, right? And I would love to know just what are some things that higher ed needs to do better at whatever level, whatever departments, whatever specializations, majors, or just if you want to just talk a little bit about your experience in the sense of this is what we need to do better at, here's where it's still not good, or what you hear from folks, from students, people that identify as trans, non-binary spectrum of like navigating that higher education path. What are your thoughts on just what needs to do better? What needs to happen?
I can talk on like the school that I'm currently at, because like at Mankato, they were definitely on the progressive end on changing a whole lot of stuff before I had left.
Yeah.
But where I'm at, like within the cosmetology setting, like at my school, they have name tags, but they don't have pronouns on there. So that could be something that they could add on. I mean, the bathrooms aren't really that all-inclusive. They're just bathrooms within a salon setting, so clients, customers can come in, different students can go in, but it's more gender-based within just the male or female gender versus just no matter what. Because in the classroom setting, in a different building, anybody can use any other bathrooms, because you don't have to kind of cater to your typical daily traffic coming in, your clients and everybody coming in and walk into a bathroom like, oh, you're not supposed to be in here. And then that's going to cause a whole who knows what. But then also kind of like having an orientation for all the students to get together, like, hey, my name is so-and-so, this is my pronouns, and kind of normalizing the pronoun setting and not having it be like an elephant in the room, or like going onto the floor and you're like, oh yeah, hey, and use the wrong pronouns, and then it's like this awkward feeling, and then maybe they're being passive aggressive or something, and then who knows what happened. But I guess something like that would be something to kind of so everybody is on that understanding and knowing already before already getting onto the floor and having that weird feeling.
Thank you.
I agree with the pronouns. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I do agree with Jaden about just normalizing pronouns. Like, every time, first day of class, you go in, you have that little intro, you get to meet everybody. And I feel like to make it normalized, the teacher should start with, hi, my name is so-and-so, and my pronouns are such and such. That way, the rest of the class will do the same thing, and there's none of that awkward situation. I'm finishing out my first year in the automotive program, and I'm still getting misgendered. And I've told my classmates and I've told my teachers what my pronouns are, and over Zoom, I put my pronouns, so it's there, and yet I'm still getting misgendered. So, and I didn't know for a while. I mean, I have like a mask that says my pronouns, and I wore that, and I still wear that mask. And for like the first 6 months, everyone misgendered me, even my teachers. I was like, are y'all not paying attention?
I'm sorry. When I got all the things in front of me and you still acting like you ain't got no damn sense, we got a problem.
Yes.
Now me and you have a problem. Problem is now in existence.
Basically, it's just there. I feel like within the institution itself, yes, there's trainings, but not all the teachers go to the trainings.
Yes.
And I feel like it should be, especially for these sensitive and yet essential things just for daily student life, they should be required in one form or another so that the instructors themselves know how to handle those situations and can say to other students, you know what, that's not how that is. Let's just go ahead, correct, and move forward.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's been a long time since I've been in school, but I remember being like a young trans kid fresh out of high school, like getting to college, being like, I'm going to transition now, like changing my name, getting on testosterone, all that kind of stuff. And I remember the anxiety of every semester having to send an email to every single one of my professors to say, this is what I would like you to call me. This is what my pronouns are. Like that's it, like before the first day of class, so that when I got in, they would not say my dead name. I don't know what it's like now, but I know like in the high schools that I work in, they have their whole system where students are able to change their name like that. And so like when a teacher gets the list, then that's already changed. So I hope that that's been taken into higher ed as well, because that would have saved me a lot of anxiety instead of having to like be in the class and they didn't update their list. And now I'm like, oh crap, everyone knows what my name is, and I don't pass anymore, because I was really concerned about passing as a guy back then. And just, I mean, I'm a person who does a lot of trainings for teachers. I also was a teacher before, so I know I didn't want to go to professional development. but I agree with EJ, the idea of like, something that I did was try to bring in representation and stuff into my classroom. I taught like pre-K to third grade, so young kids, but also like let them know like, hey, whatever you tell me about yourself, I'm going to go with that. Like if you don't want to be called the name that I have on my sheet, I got you. You want to go by different pronouns, you want, like, I got you. So just setting up that kind of expectation as the person who's in the room, who has that authority, sets up for everyone else to follow that. And also to like double down if you got somebody who's trying to like pop off and be like, no, you're being disrespectful. You have to set the example, but also advocate for those people, even if you don't see any of them in the room. You still have to just like imagine that there's someone there that could benefit from that. And also, one last thing is, when I was that like young trans guy getting into college, like I had to be the one with some other friends to like put together a student group for like trans folks to get together and have a support group and space like that. So making that possible, just like having people who are really supportive and who want to like hold on to those initiatives, because that group still exists at my alma mater. And like we were also working on like getting gender neutral housing, and that was a thing shortly after I left college, so that people could room with whoever. Like push forward those initiatives to make those spaces safer, and just to show an example, like even though no one's really asking for it, just be like, oh, we already got it, just in case,
Yes, I completely agree with what all of you are saying. And one of the things for me was I really would highly recommend, is what EJ also said too, is like, go to the fucking training so you can know what the fuck is going on. And then on top of that, try to embed things and normalize them in the syllabus. Like students have to read those, unfortunately, because it isn't unfortunate. It's a contract of those who've been teachers or have taught something. It's a contract. So like, I think about respectability politics. Like, nobody, listen, that ain't going down in my classroom. So I think as an instructor, you have to really be firm in what you're just not gonna tolerate. I've had students leave my classroom before. I was talking about race one time, and he's like, I don't agree with it. That's fine. Okay. Do you want to stay in the class? You can. If you don't want to, that's okay too. I was talking about Spider-Man and critiquing like one of the Spider-Mans, when he turned into a black Spider-Man, he was supposed to be violent and all of those things. I was critiquing that from a critical media perspective. Like, bitch, how you gonna turn black and then be violent? Like, you don't see that racial bullshit.
Why can't you just be all red or something?
Yeah. And now you black and then you just now about it. I was like, he's like, I don't, sir, that is totally fine. I'm telling you from with people who live this life. Like, we see it from a media perspective that was on some BS. So that would be my thing, is really all of what you all said, and just really show up and doing the work. I do have 2 questions before we do close out. The next one is, can you please, because I know all of you are POCs, and I would love for you to at least tell the audience the difference of navigating your non-binary trans experience in the LGBTQ community, right, from white folks who identify within the trans community, and talk a little bit about things they need to know, why it's a different moving through the world, and what to be conscious of. Because I think what happens is there's a tendency to group everyone in, and like, this is how we supposed to talk about, think about transness. No, there's multiple identities happening. And because I know you all are POCs, I would love for you to just talk about, what would you say to those that are trying to understand, learn, but take a little bit about people who are POCs and navigating through that as a different experience. So is there anything you would like to say, hey, this is how my community, or some common things we kind of go through, which is going to be different from white, queer, trans folks?
I think, like, I don't know, the first thing that came to my mind is the idea of, like, we don't have similar experiences. And that's something I had to learn at a young age. Like, I had a friend who was bisexual and white, and it was after Mike Brown was murdered.
Yeah.
And I was like just tuned in. And I thought before that we were very close. We had a lot of things in common, you know, some stuff different, but like super close. But there was a moment where they looked at me, because I'm like sitting on watching the live streams crying, and they're like, "I'm so sorry, Jay." And I was like, "You're sorry? What, are you sorry that I'm upset? Why are you not as angry as I am?" And like that, like the very telling moment of like, I'm not just a queer person. I'm not just a trans person. I am a Black, queer, trans person. And all of these things, all parts of my identity, are coming together and showing me there's a vast like chasm between us right now. And that's, I'm going through something you will never experience or never feel as deeply as I do. And like, that's just where it is. And we did stop being friends after that. but like, that's the thing, is like, I don't know, my interactions coming out over the decades or whatever with my family are gonna look a lot different than like a white person's. And that's for many different reasons, not because like the Black community is inherently homophobic or anything like that, but just because it's just different. There's a different understanding of that kind of stuff. Like, I feel that like trans and queer people are pretty abundant in the Black community, but there's different words for it, you know? So like, that's the main thing. It's just like, there is a difference there, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's just, this is kind of where we are in the world, and that's how I work through the world. That's how you work through the world. But that's something you need to acknowledge. You can't lump me in with you and say that we're all going through the same stuff. It's just not true.
I guess I can say, like, when it comes down to like surgeries and like taking hormones and stuff like that, not everybody within like the POC community will actually be able to get all of that. And also there's some white people who aren't able to get that, but there's more white people to get those surgeries and those hormones. And it's like, just because all of a sudden one day this person, oh, they get their surgery, they look like how they look, and then it's like you have people within the POC community who have to do like crowdfund sourcing, like going out doing fundraisers, going out and asking their family friends, their friends and family and all that, or doing something to raise this money, at working overtime, picking up multiple jobs just to raise enough money to get what they deserve, what they know that they should be having. And but yeah, I would say with that, starting with that, just to be mindful that not everybody within the POC community has the opportunity to start right on board. They don't have that privilege right away.
You know, I struggle a little bit because I am half Filipino, but I don't appear half Filipino unless I'm tan. And there ain't no sun in Washington, so I just look white all the time. So like I struggle with understanding a lot of the nuances between being viewed as white and actually being Filipino. Like the only way I come across anybody who's Filipino, I have to be like, oh yeah, my family's from Olongapo. And then they'll start talking to me in Tagalog. And I'm like, I have no idea what you said, because my grandma said they're not teaching us Tagalog. Like, that's just not a thing that's happening, you know? And what I know of Filipino culture, I only get from my family. And I've gotten really, really lucky in my family, because apparently in the Philippines, it is super accepted. Like, you can be trans, you can gender fluid, drag, what have you, doesn't matter. Everyone's like, okay, cool, you're still family. That person is my friend's sister. That's your auntie. We're all family. It's okay. You know, and that's just the way it is. So I go out into the world and I'm like, okay, cool. You're older than me. You're my auntie. You're older than me. You're my uncle. You're non-binary. You're my uncle. It's cool. Like, that's just the way it is. So I struggle with that a little bit, just because I don't see it the same. I don't see those nuances. You know what I mean? Because I do walk through the world more or less, especially here in Washington with the white face. So I'm gonna get more of that like white privilege just because of that. And one part of me is like, that's not fair. It's just not fair.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that. I do. And I know because of time, my last question for you all is, what would you tell a student, right, who is who is coming into their transness, their non-binariness as a student, and is a little nervous about what's going to happen, and what advice would you give them coming into college?
I'd say make a Twitter account and find you, because there's tons of people on Twitter that are within the BIPOC community that are able to be a support system, who are also within the trans community and non-binary community. And I never realized how many people were actually out there until I went onto Twitter, because I mean, there's like Facebook groups and all that, but like Twitter, you can really see people in their true form and how they really want to present themselves. And so that's really comforting and really kind of eye-opening in a way as well. And just knowing like, yeah, I can be who I am and actually have, even if it's just online, that's still a friendship. That's still somebody that you can talk to, or somebody you can just share their tweet, like their tweet, DM them something. It's still somebody you can communicate with some way or another.
Thank you.
I would just say there's that folks are out there. You may not see them. You may not, know who they are, but they are there. And even within your major, whatever that happens to be, and give it a little bit of time, they may come up to you. I mean, I had a one of my trans classmates, I had no idea He passed really, really well. I had no clue. And then one day he just walked up to me and he was like, "Oh, BT dubs, I also am AFAB." I was like, "Who said what now?" Okay, everybody is there. Like, it just may take a little bit of time, but people are there. And if worse comes to worse, find your local DEIC. Like, that's going to be a space for all the queer folks to just feel accepted.
I definitely agree. Like finding a community of some sort is always super, super important because you need like those people to be able to reach out to, like Jaden said, and be able to talk to and stuff. And if you don't find one, you can make it yourself. And people will come. That's what I had to do. And also, I think, I mean, I tell this to the high schoolers that I work with all the time, but like, don't feel like I don't know. Identity is fluid, you know? It really is. And like, it is okay if you come to a point where you start questioning yourself. I went through that. I was like transitioning. I had done a bunch of stuff. And then I was like, maybe I don't identify as this anymore. And like, it was really scary, but it's okay. Cause like, I mean, you have your whole life ahead of you. You can make a lot of different choices without any kind of regret or anything like that. It's just a part of life as we move through this wild journey. It's okay to have one decision one day and change it the next. I feel like a lot of people feel like they got to be stuck, but you don't. It's okay.
There's no contract.
Exactly. You ain't signed nothing.
Yes, no agreement was signed, so it is all good. Oh man, I want to say it's an honor, privilege, and I had so much fun, as I always do when I do this, and having you all in the room, I really appreciate it. So I just want to thank you for being here. Thank those who are listening. Hopefully you learned something. Basically, the gist of the conversation is fucking do the work and show up right. So, just want to be clear about that. Just in a little bit of hood language, if you didn't get it in the academic, because we can do that as well. So thank you for tuning in today with the Unheard Eyesider, and we hope you listen to our last episode, which we're talking about, what is it? Accountability and
Cancel culture versus accountability culture.
So that's our last episode coming up before the end of the quarter. So, and then the host is going to take a fucking break. So, and relax. But I really appreciate you all for being here. And we hope that you all tune in next time.